Good morning to everyone here in New York City, and good evening, konbanwa, to all of you in Japan, and good afternoon to all of you from around the world. We're delighted to welcome you to our event this morning in partnership with Asia Society, titled Japan versus COVID-19, a conversation with His Excellency Kono Taro, Minister of Defense of Japan. My name is Sakako Hikotani, Associate Professor of Political Science and a member of the Weatherhead East Asian Institute at Columbia University. It is our great honor to welcome Minister Kono back to Columbia following his first visit as Foreign Minister in September 2017. Although Minister Kono is someone who requires no introduction, please let me briefly explain to you what makes him an exceptional leader in Japan. First, he's truly international. A graduate of Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, he was an exchange student to Poland during his undergraduate years and has interned in Congress and the Senate. And in the 2 years as Foreign Minister between August 2017 and 2019, he traveled to 77 different countries and spent 290 days abroad, or 1 out of 3 days as Foreign Minister, far more than any previous Foreign Ministers of Japan. He also visited 14 countries that no other Japanese Foreign Minister has visited, including Ecuador, South Sudan, Bhutan, and Iceland. He established close ties with other foreign ministers, including meeting 23 times with Korean Foreign Minister Kang, 14 times with Secretary Pompeo, and 11 times each with foreign ministers of Russia and China. He has continued his active engagement with his counterparts as defense minister, engaging in phone meetings this past couple of weeks. Second, while his very youthful looks may be somewhat deceiving, he's actually a veteran politician with wide-ranging expertise. An 8-term member of the House of Representatives since 1996, the positions he has held are Minister in charge of the National Police Organization, Minister for Administrative Civil Service Reform and Regulatory Reform, and Minister in charge of Disaster Management. He was also chairman of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs of the House of Representatives. Finally, Minister Kono is known for being very outspoken and accountable to the public and approachable. He has been active on social media far longer than any other politicians, with 1.6 million followers on his Japanese Twitter account. Some of his followers may be joining us today. Since he became defense minister in 2019, he has been actively sharing his daily activities, making the public more familiar with what the defense minister does and with activities of the self-defense forces overall, including self-defense's role and activities dealing with the COVID-19. All this makes it extremely fortunate for us to welcome him today. I look forward to hearing his assessment of the lessons learned from Japan's experience with coronavirus and his insight into what Japan can play what role Japan can play in the global response, as well as the broader security implications of the pandemic in the region. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is an event in partnership with the Asia Society and Asia Society Policy Institute. And with great pleasure, I would like to introduce Mr. Daniel Russel.
Thanks, Takako.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to introduce you. Mr. Russel is a Vice President for International Security and Diplomacy at the Asia Society Policy Institute, a career member of the Senior Foreign Service at the U.S. Department of State. He most recently served as Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, and has served at the White House as Special Assistant to the President and National Security Council Senior Director for Asian Affairs. So please, Danny.
Thank you very much, Takako. The Asia Society has been conducting a series on COVID, Asia, and the world. So now it's really great to be able to partner on a webcast with the Weatherhead Institute. And Minister Kono, your entire background is so impressive. What I'm impressed by is that a Georgetown grad agreed to give a talk to Columbia University students. So good on you for doing that. But in all seriousness, you have been not only a wonderful friend of the Asia Society, but a true friend of the United States. And we thank you for that. I find it amazing that when you were studying in Washington, you managed to not just work for 2 different senators, but work for a Republican and Democratic senator at probably the opposite ends of the political spectrum. So I think you know a lot and have a special understanding of the United States. Really appreciate your willingness to join you. And lastly, I just have to say that I think that your mask with that Hiroshige woodblock print, the ukiyo-e, is going to start a big fashion trend in the United States and probably all over the world. But back to you, Takako.
Thank you, Danny. Let me just say how we will proceed today. First, we will ask Minister Kono to speak. Then Mr. Russell and Minister Kono will engage in some conversation, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Please, viewers are very much encouraged to send questions throughout the event. Please do not hesitate. Through the comment box on Facebook and YouTube, and through Twitter using the hashtag Asia Society Live or COVID World WEAI, or through email to moderator@asiasociety.org. So please, Minister Kono, please begin your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, and good morning to those in the United States. Thank you very much, Hikotani-san, for inviting me over to this occasion to talk about what our self-defense force has been doing against COVID-19. So, well, although Hikotani-san told me not to use too many slides, I cut them down to the minimum number. So without much ado, let me start my presentation. So please proceed with my slides, whoever that is. Good. Yep, next slide, please. I want to talk about our self-defense force and what they have been doing for COVID-19. There are three things: Operation Diamond Princess. Self-defense force went into the now famous cruise ship Diamond Princess, and then self-defense force Central Hospital, who took care of the foreign patients from Diamond Princess, and education and training. SDF members are doing some training to the general public. Next slide, please. Well, the cruise ship Diamond Princess is now very famous. It flies British flag. It is operated by American company. It has Italian captain, and it has passengers from 36 countries and crew from 46 countries, and in total 3,711 people on board when the Diamond Princess came to Yokohama. And although, well, according to the international law, probably the British government would have been responsible for taking care of all the issue on this ship, but it was in the port of Yokohama. UK was far away, so I guess the Japanese government had to take up this issue, and the self-defense force was called in to tackle this problem. Next slide, please. The Diamond Princess came to Hong Kong on January 25th, and the passenger who got off there was found infected with COVID-19. And then the first COVID-19 patient was found on February 1st on board. And the ship came to Yokohama on February 3rd. And the Japanese government decided to start testing all the passengers and the crew members against COVID-19. It started on February 4th. And the self-defense force was called in on February 7th. And then February 14th, those who tested negative and spent certain days on ship started to get off the ship. And by February 22nd, all the passengers, those who had a symptom of COVID-19 were sent to the hospital in Japan, and those who tested positive with no symptom were sent to dorm in Japan, and those who are tested negative started to go home. And by March 3rd, all the crew members get off the ship. Next slide, please. So out of 3,700 people on board, finally 712 people got infected with COVID-19. and 672 had either fever, pneumonia, cough, or whatever symptom. And just about 40 people were asymptomatic. And unfortunately, 13 people died in the hospital. And the Self-Defense Force Central Hospital admitted 107 passengers and crew, and they all treated well and they all recovered. And those foreign passengers, crew member already gone home. Next slide, please. So what Self-Defense Force did on the Diamond Princess is they start taking sample from the body for PCR testing. And many passengers on board were very old. I mean, they were enjoying their retirement on the cruise ship. So there are some people in 80s, 70s, 60s, and quite a few of them had a diabetes or heart disease already, and they needed the medication. And they weren't expecting to stay on ship so many days. So what we had to do is we bring in all the medication and distribute the medication to the right passengers and the crew. Self-Defense Force member also had to take those people who had the symptom, who developed the symptom of COVID-19. We need to drive them to the hospitals. And also, those who tested negative, we had to send them to airport so they could go home. And after they left the ship, we need to disinfection the ship. And the Self-Defense Force Central Hospital, as I said, got 107 patients and they treated well. Well, actually, nearly 5,000 Self-Defense Force members were involved in this Diamond Princess incident. Some 2,700 in total went on board Diamond Princess, and 2,200 took care of those patients or asymptomatic passengers, crew on land. And none of those 5,000 Self-Defense Force members got infected. Next slide, please. Well, here I'm showing some photos, what they've been doing on the ship, collecting sample for testing, sorting out the medication for passengers, and some people wearing Tyvek suits, which is a personal protection equipment. You can tell some people are just wearing mask and glove. Some people wearing Tyvek suit. Those who are wearing just a mask and gloves, they were in so-called green. Well, they were not so green, but the green zone. And those who are in the red zone, who have some risks of getting coronavirus, they had to wear goggles, Tyvek suits, and all those things. And the reason, you can go to the next slide, please. The reason why those nearly 5,000 Self-Defense Force members, none of them got infected, we put out very strict healthcare rules. So you have to wear certain gear in red zone, you have to wear mask and glove in green zone, and when you go between red zone and green zone, you have to follow each steps, how you wash your hands, how to put on mask and shields and all those things. And we simply told Self-Defense Force members to just obey all the rules every day, and they meticulously obey these rules, and that's why none of them get infected. We actually made a video for education purpose. We show that to the Self-Defense Force members, and now we are using this video for education now. So I would like to show one video out of that. It is to how to move from, sorry, I said green zone to red zone, but it's wrong. How to move red zone into green zone, the risk zone to safer zone. The key is how to take off the personal protection equipment. When you put them on, it's okay, but when you take it off after coming out of red zone, there's a virus on the surface of the gear. So you have to be very careful about the procedures. It's a 2-minute video, so please take a look at it. Please go to the video now, please.
固定したテープを外します。シューズカバーを消毒します。シューズカバーの紐を外します。アウター手袋を消毒します。片方の手袋を裏側を表にしながら外していきます。外した手袋の内側を持ち、その手袋でもう一方の手袋をつかみながら手袋を外します。前ファスナーを一番下まで下ろした後、皮膚や髪の毛に触れないようにフードを外します。肩から脱ぎます。腰の位置まで脱ぎます。シューズカバーも一緒に脱ぎます。ゴーグルの後頭部ゴムバンドを引っ張り上げ、外します。マスクのゴム部分のみを触って、マスクを外します。インナー手袋を消毒して、裏返しながら手袋を外します。
Thank you. So every time they cross the line, separating the red zone, the risk zone, and going into the green zone, they had to do this every time. And that's why they were okay and came back home safely. Next slide, please. So Self-Defense Force Central Hospital admitted 107 PCR positive patients with symptom. Well, some people had no symptom at the beginning. I will show you later. There are quite a few passengers, crew from so many countries, and almost 40% of them are Japanese, and more than 60% of them are foreign passengers. Next slide, please. So this is the daily new number of the patients admitted to the Self-Defense Force Central Hospital. Next slide, please. Here I'm showing you some CT image. The Central Hospital scanned every single patient who they admitted, and 1/3 of them had no symptom at the beginning. 2/3 had a cough, fever, but they scanned every patient with CT, and they found out 1/3 of asymptomatic patients already had a pneumonia, and they call it silent pneumonia. Those patients who had a silent pneumonia had no fever, no cough, no symptom at all, but eventually they knew that they're going to develop a very severe symptom if they have silent pneumonia at the beginning. So Central Hospital warned all the other Japanese hospitals to take CT scan of every patient. And if they had a silent pneumonia, they have to be ready for further severe symptom later on. And I think that helped deal with severe cases. Next slide, please. Oop, I'm running out of time. This shows number of deaths from flu and pneumonia. The green line is the usual year, the average of previous years. The red line includes the margin of error of average. And this dotted line is this year. So you can tell, actually, Japan, well, the last dot is probably at the beginning of April. So this is actually not up to today, but you can tell there are not many excess deaths in Japan, at least at the beginning of this coronavirus thing, because we asked people to wash their hands. So there were less number of regular seasonal flu this year, and the deaths from flu and the pneumonia were actually less than average year. And then we had a death from coronavirus. So Japan has been able to manage without many excess deaths with coronavirus. Last slide, please. So what Self-Defense Force is doing is we are actually training people now, training members of the local government and training private companies. Right now, if you tested positive and you have a symptom, we send them to the hospital. And if you tested positive but asymptomatic, we'll send them to a hotel to spend certain days. And in order to transport those people, well, Self-Defense Force did transportation at the beginning, but now we are transferring this transportation to bus and taxi companies because we have not many tourists anymore. So the bus company or taxi company need a revenue. So instead of Self-Defense Force driving those patients to the hospital or hotel, we are asking bus company, taxi company to do that. And the hotel has almost no tourists. So we are asking hotel to take care of those who are staying in hotel with asymptomatic coronavirus so that they can actually generate the money. Self-Defense Force do training and we do the thing for the first week and we retreat. Right now we are beginning to see heavy rains starting to fall in Japan. And every year we get some flood, heavy rain, typhoon, and the Self-Defense Force need to go out for disaster relief. So we cannot really stretch our resource too thin. And at the same time, when the global community is fighting against this COVID-19, we are seeing Chinese increasing their military activities in East China Sea. Our fighter jet had to scramble more than 150 times in first 90 days. And now Chinese ships are sitting on our territorial water or just nearby almost every day. So Self-Defense Force need to be prepared to take on those issues in East China Sea. So we had to be ready for those natural disasters and some aggression. So we cannot spend too much resource on the COVID-19. And that's why we need to tackle those things. So we are providing training and to the general public. I'm running out of my time, so I will stop here. And thank you very much for joining us this evening or this morning.
Minister Kono, thanks so much. You'll never run out of time with us. We love to hear from you. And that was a very useful, insightful briefing. There are a number of points I'd love to come back to. I'll start by saying how striking it has been that Japan has succeeded in, as we say, flattening the curve on COVID-19 with a minimum of really tough national measures. But let me start by picking up the point that you made, that from about the first week of February, nearly 5,000 self-defense force personnel were involved in helping the passengers on the Diamond Princess, collecting samples, distributing medicine, and so on. And yet not one of them was infected with COVID. That's really very impressive. So you emphasized that the strict adherence to good health protocols was the key to keeping your own service members safe, and you're spreading those teachings through local government programs and private companies. But can I ask you, how is Japan helping less developed countries, less developed neighbors? The Pacific Islands, for example, are incredibly vulnerable. They've got very weak public health systems and so on. So COVID-19, an outbreak on Pacific Island would really be very destructive. Is that something that Japan and the Japan Self-Defense Force has focused on at all?
Well, we are not actually going out of the country for COVID-19, self-defense force. The Japanese government has been assisting WHO tackling this matter. We are doing a supplementary budget, and we will probably put some money in a supplementary budget to help the less developed country. We had to postpone 2020 Tokyo Paralympic Games to next year. So in order to have a successful Olympic Games, we need to eradicate COVID-19 from all over. We just cannot say, yes, we're done with it, but if other countries still have it, we cannot have a successful Olympic Games. So supporting Africa, Latin America, or Middle East country, or the Pacific Island country, I think luckily we hear not many cases of COVID-19 from the Pacific Island, but it's a quite a high priority for the Japanese government to assist the other country.
Well, you're unique in being both a defense minister and a former foreign minister, and you brought your foreign minister's diplomatic skill set to the Ministry of Defense. I can see you've been personally extraordinarily active. I saw that in the last week or two, you've spoken on the phone with your counterparts in the US, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Indonesia, Singapore, New Zealand, Philippines, India, Australia, Canada. I probably missed a few there. Would you tell us a little bit about what the message is that you have tried to convey to your counterparts, and what are some of the common concerns that crop up in these discussions?
Well, before COVID-19, the defense ministers were talking about how this climate change becoming our issue, the security issue. But now we are adding pandemic to the issue that our security guys need to be watching. A lot of military people are involved in countering the COVID-19 all over. US, UK, Italy, a lot of people. So it's becoming one of the major issue for the military as well. And then we also talked about what's going to happen post-COVID-19 global order. We are a bit concerned after COVID-19, maybe there's some threat coming to the international order, like democracy against authoritarian regime, or free society against Orwellian society. So the like-minded country need to start talking about what we need to be doing after coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. Minister, you mentioned at the end of your presentation the activism of China's People's Liberation Army, in particular the East China Sea. So in the middle of the global pandemic, the COVID-19 crisis, we saw the Chinese aircraft carrier, the Liaoning, along with 5 other warships, moving back and forth between Okinawa and Miyakojima, We saw a Chinese Coast Guard ship sinking a Vietnamese fishing boat in the Paracels. The Chinese authorities set up what they claim to be new administrative districts in the South China Sea to unilaterally attempt to change the area's status quo. How do you perceive the geostrategic risks from the pandemic?
Well, we see their activities in East China Sea and South China Sea as well. And as you said, the aircraft carriers moving around, moving through Okinawa Island to the Pacific. So, when the global community facing a real threat from coronavirus, and we need to work together, currently we are not able to work together to fight against the coronavirus. Everyone's trying to scramble to buy masks or PPEs, or there's nobody really trying to take the leadership how we can coordinate the fight against the coronavirus. I mean, China has been sending all their medical equipment to African countries or some European countries and all those. But at the same time, they're trying to threat countries in South China Sea or sending ships to Japan or sending fighter jet to Japan. So they are sending the contradicting message to the global right now. So I think we really need to sit down and, well, this pandemic will come back again. We have had a SARS, MERS, COVID-19, and there'll be definitely some other coming up. So we really need to sit down and make WHO stronger. And then we need to talk what we should be doing. We failed quite a bit. We didn't have, we were not prepared enough for this pandemic. So what needs to be done for the next round? I think this time, the food industry or energy industry were doing much better than the previously. So now there's a still free movement of foodstuff, and energy is coming out freely from the Middle East and other places. We have learned some lessons, but we need to do more. And I think we need to sit down and start talking about what we have failed. So what need to be improved.
Well, you're making a really profound set of points, and I couldn't agree with you more, both on the importance of learning from our experience and the importance of preparing for future pandemics and crises, but also the importance of international coordination and cooperation and leadership. But let me stay on the military theme, given your current role, and ask, we talked a little bit about an aircraft carrier group, the Liaoning, but the aircraft carrier group that has faced the most dramatic challenge from COVID-19, of course, is the USS Ronald Reagan. The USS Theodore Roosevelt. It's the Reagan, of course, that's home ported in Yokosuka. There was I think a modest outbreak there in Yokosuka, but the real challenge has been on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, where as many as 1,000 sailors tested positive. The entire carrier strike group, I think, has been held up for weeks in Guam. They just perhaps put to port. The skipper was relieved of duty. So what kind of a challenge does the pandemic pose to military readiness? And particularly, are you concerned that the disease could be compromising the alliance's deterrence capability at a moment when, as you've pointed out, there's an increase in troubling military activities by the People's Liberation Army?
Well, U.S. Forces Japan took care of very well, I think. Ronald Reagan is now getting ready to move out of Yokosuka. They don't have many people infected on board. So I don't think the readiness of U.S. forces Japan compromised at all this time. And self-defense force, we are okay now. I mean, as of today, there's nobody infected. So we were not, our posture was not compromised. But this could happen to any ships of any navy. I think we were lucky. Self-defense force has now 2 ships out to the Middle East, and there are some outbreaks in the Middle East. So when they are refueling, none of them are going off the ship. They have to stay on for 6 months on the ship while they were in Arabian Sea. So it's kind of hard for them, but we cannot help it. And our self-defense force, if you go to the bases, we have so many self-defense force members living in one base, and it's more like a dormitory. So if somebody get the virus, it will spread in the base quite fast. So we have to be very careful. So far, against coronavirus, COVID-19, we are okay, but this could happen again, and every military is vulnerable for the spread of pandemic. So we never really thought about how to protect our members from pandemic, but this is going to be a serious issue now. So we need to be, and thank God we have a good hospital system in self-defense force, and they are very capable, and they are very well trained against those disease. So I think we need to invest more so we can develop testing method as soon as possible, so we can detect who are actually infected and quarantine them.
Well, Minister, speaking of hospitals, speaking of investments, and speaking of ships, do you give any thought to the idea of Japan acquiring a dedicated hospital ship? I know that's been suggested by some Diet members. I ride my bike around Manhattan and used to ride past the U.S. Navy hospital ship, the Comfort, that was sent to New York at the peak of the COVID outbreak here in April. Is that something that Japan might consider?
Yes, we are actually considering not just the self-defense force, but those government agency in charge of the disaster management and the health and welfare ministry. That hospital ship could be used for these cases or some disaster relief. Or at the peacetime, we can send them to the Pacific Island country to treat some severe disease among them. So we are now thinking about it, and well, it's not gonna be ready for COVID-19, but it could be something we have for the next round.
Okay. Well, Minister, we've got a lot of fantastic questions from Columbia University folks and from others, but I can't let you go without asking you one more thing, which is this. I recently, just the other day, saw a great video of you inaugurating Japan's Space Operations Squadron. So congratulations, that's really, really cool. But on the same day, I saw a report that Japan's Defense Ministry is going to be drawing up protocols for potential encounters with UFOs. So come on, Minister, this is your chance to really make some news. Is the self-defense force gearing up to protect Earth against space aliens? I'm thinking of the movie Independence Day. Or does the Space Operations Squadron have a less exciting mission?
Well, unfortunately, our Space Operations Squadron is not going to deal with UFO. That's not one of their mission. But actually, I told our Air Self-Defense Force to think about the protocol, what we need to do when they actually encounter UFO. I don't really believe in there's somebody coming from the space, But I mean, U.S. forces put out some video of UFO. So as an alliance partner, I thought it would be necessary for us to start thinking about it.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're thinking about it. So let me turn back to my partner and colleague, Professor Hikotani, and let's hear some of the questions from our viewers and from her students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me first mention that there has been questions asked about how you can get the Hiroshige mask. So if there could be an answer provided by the end of the program, that would be great. But on a little more serious note, as you know, thank you. At Columbia, all the students had to vacate the campus, or most students had to vacate the campus in March. So there's one student who is asking a question from Singapore, where she is right now. And I'd like to pick that up. Brianne Tan asked, first, what contingency plan does Japan have in order to avoid a second wave of COVID-19, as we've seen in Singapore and South Korea? And what best practices can Japan share with other countries in the region, Southeast Asia, specifically looking at the role of the self-defense forces?
Well, we are just getting over with our first wave, and probably by the end of May, we are reopening our society, our economy. But I think everyone is worried about the second wave, so we need to reopen slowly, I guess. We don't have any law to force people to lock down in this situation. The government simply asking people to stay home, and we managed to keep the number of fatality very low. And we would like to continue this way. We are not quite sure what need to be done to avoid the second wave. I think some kind of second wave, I don't think we can avoid, but we need to manage. And if we see the sign of it, I think we need to ask people to stay home again. So we have to take it slowly. What was the additional question? Sorry. I can't hear you. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Right. What practice? I'm sorry. Practices that Japan can share with other countries in the region, meaning Southeast Asia. Actually, Mohammed El Beltaji asked via YouTube the same question. What countries in Southeast Asia do you see as most vulnerable? And is there any specific country that you have in mind that you might think that Japan can help out with? Thank you.
Well, when I was a foreign minister, I was quite involved in those Muslim refugees coming from Myanmar to Bangladesh, and they are still staying in the camp. And with this cyclone, super cyclone actually coming to Bangladesh, they must be suffering. But as I saw their living condition in the camp, if coronavirus came in, I think it would spread so rapidly. So those refugees in this region, I think we need to pay extra attention, and I think we need to help each other and those refugees on my mind.
Thank you. Another question, I'm going to be combining a couple of questions on U.S.-Japan alliance. One question is from Nina Harano, who is a Japanese student studying at Columbia College. She's here in New York City right now. She's went to high school in Okinawa. So she's asking if there was some, if you can elaborate on the cooperation that has taken place so far at the ground level in Japan over COVID between the US and Japan.
Well, the US Marines in Okinawa helping the medical people in Okinawa. I think they made a face shield among the Marines, and they donated to the medical workers in Okinawa to protect themselves. So there are a lot of cooperation going on the ground, and we are very grateful for their action there.
Thank you. And Stephen asked via email, aside from US forces, how much coordination collaboration is happening between Japan and South Korea? With both countries in such close proximity to China, and there's travelers from China, but both countries have handled it pretty well, all things considered. So is there any cooperation you see? I know that you have a very close relationship with South Korea going forward. Is there something that we should be expecting?
Well, right now, because of this COVID-19, all the joint exercise with other country and self-defense force are postponed or canceled. It's quite unfortunate. There were talk among my Director General level that are at the minister level. Myself, Secretary Esper, and the Korean Defense Minister will have a conference call sometime soon, because we usually meet in Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, but that has been canceled this year. So instead of going there meeting in person, we are trying to talk about the regional issues soon. And hopefully, once this COVID-19 is over, Japan, Korea, US, and other countries could participate in joint exercise. I think the RIMPAC in Hawaii is still on, and we are sending our maritime self-defense force ships to Hawaii to participate in RIMPAC. And if ROK could send a Navy, we're going to be doing the joint exercise with US Navy as well.
Thank you. You just answered another question that was asked by Derek Smith, who just is a U.S. Army officer who just received his MA from Columbia about the security cooperation in near and long term. So I guess we can be hopeful that things will come back in order after things settle down a bit. Turning to a little bit more long-term academic question. This is from Professor Philip Lipsey at University of Toronto. He asked, although COVID-19 likely emerged from a natural source, the pandemic appears to reveal serious vulnerabilities in all major countries to biological warfare or bioterrorism. From the perspective of national defense, what type of reforms need to be implemented based on lessons learned from the pandemic? So what are the lessons learned from the pandemic on biological warfare or bioterrorism?
Yes, self-defense force actually had a chemical terrorism with sarin in subway in Tokyo some years ago. And we have been sort of training self-defense force against the nuclear biochemical warfare. And those who went in on board Diamond Princess came from those medical team of biochemical group. And because nobody get infected on board, we sort of increased our trust and the confidence in them. And now they are going around those local government and the private company educating how to protect themselves. And I think in the future, when we have some kind of, we usually have natural disaster drill. We may have to consider some kind of antivirus protection drill of some kind. I don't think we're going to be doing that against the bio warfare, but for the protecting people from a general pandemic, we may need to do some kind of exercise in a bigger scale. That's something we may have to think about it. Right now, there's no plan yet. I think we are still focusing on the COVID-19. But once this COVID-19 thing is over, I think there are a lot of review we have to do. Do we have enough stock in PPE, masks, gloves, and all those things? What is manufacturing capability of PPE in Japan? Or what about the manufacturing capability of basic medication in Japan? Do we have strong supply chain for those medication and all those vaccination and all those stuff. So there's a lot of review need to be done. But before that, I think we need to eradicate this coronavirus first.
Thank you. Switching to a more broader question, this is from Susan Halper from YouTube. She asked, you said there has been discussion about world order after COVID-19 and concern about authoritarian behavior. Has the US been participating in this in a meaningful way? And if so, if not, what can Japan do about this?
Well, when I spoke with the Defense Secretary, we talked about some challenges that we may have to face. And it's almost bilateral telephone conversation. So it's not like defense ministers sitting down doing the Zoom conference. It's not like that. But I think the post-coronavirus, I think it'll be a little bit new society, a little bit different society domestically, and the international order could be different. So we need to start thinking what need to be improved. Like WHO certainly need to be improved, and the global supply chain need to be strengthened. And how to deal with pandemic. Should we give government very strong power so they can order people what to do for a long time? Or like what we did, we didn't even give the government enough law to tell people what to do. We simply had to ask people, but we coped with it. So there's a lot of things we need to talk about. And I think either way, we need to keep democracy. We need to keep free society. We need to keep the market economy. Compared to the previous time, the energy price, food price is more stable. And it's probably because we still keeping free trade even in this time. So the free trade, free society, democracy, market economy can cope with pandemic. And I believe we can do it better than authoritarian Orwellian society.
Thank you. So one related question, Kana Koichi asked via YouTube, Kevin Rudd and Gordon Brown contributed an opinion piece in Nikkei Asian Review on April 8, 2020. The Japan should lead G20 in devising global COVID-19 rescue package. Do you agree?
What do you mean by rescue package?
I don't know, but do you think the Japan should take the lead in G20? Actually, Philip Lipsy once again asked a similar question. Do you see how the US and Japan have both been critical of WHO's handling of COVID-19? Do you see the need for other institutions or frameworks to strengthen international cooperation in response to the pandemic?
Well, we believe in WHO. We may have to review some of activities, but I don't think we need a different framework. The Prime Minister Abe and Deputy Prime Minister Aso have been proposing to create a fund to buy patent for new vaccination or new drug for the COVID-19. For those pharmaceutical company, it'll be probably very difficult to provide those drug or vaccination free, vis-a-vis their stakeholders. So we are proposing G7 will chip in and we purchase their patent for the vaccination or drug. So the G7 can provide those drugs free or cheaper to the developing economy to help people there. So that's the Japanese leadership, I think.
Right. Thank you. So this will be the last question to you. This is from Joshua Walker, president of Japan Society in New York. He asked, based on what you have laid out, what should US-Japan priorities be moving forward post-COVID? What is in our control? How do we move beyond while recognizing there are a lot of unknowns? So what's the future ahead for US-Japan priorities?
Well, I think the future need to be trying to maintain the current international order. In order to do that, I think we need to take up the trade issues. We need to talk about the international organization like WHO. And we also need to be talking about the security issues. So there are a lot of things, but I think it's not just the US and Japan, but those like-minded countries who share the common value need to sit down and work together to protect our values that we believe in.
Thank you. At that note, can I go over to you, Danny or Mr. Russell, for your thoughts about this exchange and what you might want to add?
Yes, thank you so much, Tagaku. It was a lot of fun to hear great questions from the viewers and from your students. Mr. Kono, my own experience working in the White House, working in the State Department, supporting America's rebalance to the Asia Pacific, that taught me just how valuable the US-Japan alliance really is. And in the wake of the 3/11 tsunami and the Fukushima disaster in 2011, I was very proud to have played a supporting role in Operation Tomodachi and so on. So I know how important it is that in the midst of a new global disaster, that Japan and the Japan Self-Defense Force is stepping up, not only to protect Japan citizens, but also to assist and to share best practices with other countries in the way that you described. I have to say that I know I'm not alone in really admiring your candor and your honesty, frankly, your humility in recognizing that our governments all could have done much more, could have done it much better, much more quickly, and could have done it with better international coordination in order to deal with the current pandemic. And I take your very important point that we need to learn from our mistakes, that we need to think through questions about funding vaccine patents, about maintaining supply chains, about protecting free trade and democratic freedoms, finding ways to work together through the WHO and other international cooperative mechanisms in order to protect ourselves and the world from the next pandemic, the next crisis. So we learned a lot from you, and I just will close by saying thank you. Thanks to you and to all of your colleagues for what you're doing, and thank you in particular for joining Tagaku and myself today.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, Minister Kono, for your final thoughts.
Well, if you look at the Asia and compare Asia to Europe, Europe has EU, although EU missed the UK now, and NATO. We don't have EU nor NATO in Asia. Every Asian country a bit different. And so we need to work harder to talk to the Asian country and trying to have all the Asian country looking same goal. And that's something we really need to be doing. And Japan alone cannot do that. We need to work with ASEAN. We need to work with Australia, United States, and India, and other countries. And this COVID-19 is showing us how vulnerable Asia is, or Asian people are. And that's why we need to work together. And we have to work together to get rid of COVID-19 now.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Kono, for sharing your busy schedule with us. I think we all learned so much and came out with many important issues to think about. So unfortunately, we're out of time, so I need to conclude. At the end, I'd like to thank all the staff. Thank you for the mask once again. That's a wonderful mask. Thanks for the staff who helped us put together at Asia Society in New York and the Weatherhead East Asia Institute at Columbia. And special thanks to my friend, Chairman James Kondo at the International House of Japan for hosting Asia Society's Sawako Hidaka and the Ministry of Defense press office. Thank you to the audience for joining us early Thursday morning or Thursday night in Japan and around the world. For those who joined us late, I would like to note that the video will be later posted on Weatherhead East Asian Institute website or at weaicolumbia.edu or at the Asia Society website. And for those interested in Columbia and Asia Society's global coverage of COVID-19 and other upcoming programs, more information is available on wai.columbia.edu and asiasociety.org. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Kono. Thank you, Danny, for joining. Thank you, and thank you to everyone for joining us. And have a nice day and have a nice evening. And please take care. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Takako.
Thank you.